Right now, however, we will introduce you to a new player on the political scene in the 7th Congressional District. Caleb Stack reached out to me via email and said, "Hey, Murph, you know what? I'm a new candidate for the 7th Congressional District. This was during the time when Mark Green had decided that he wasn't going to run. Now he's decided that he is going to run. And obviously, I'm all about individuals that are offering themselves up to public service, introducing them to you, the listening audience. And in that mind, we welcome Caleb Stack into the studio with us this afternoon to talk about his candidacy. Hello, Caleb. How are you?
Thanks, Matt, for having me on today.
Why in the world would you want to lower yourself and your good standing with your community by running for political office?
Well, honestly, I think it's got more to do with the underrepresentation of the common American in Congress today. It's so disconnected from the average lived experience that we need more representation of the common man, which is why I'm glad to be the little guy. I'm glad to be the unknown, the curveball up against Mark Green in this case.
Have you already filed?
I have. Everything was filed on February 16th. I actually pulled my petition on February 5th. And the funny story about that is that I was going to run regardless because I thought that Mark Green might make a governor run in 2026. So I would hope to be the next obvious choice at that time. But then when he announced that he wasn't going to run, I'm like, okay, let's put the wheels in motion. Let's get this going.
So I'm just meeting you for the first time. I'm having the pleasure of getting to know you. I want the audience to get to know you as well. Tell us a little about yourself.
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Cheatham County, where I currently live with my wife and 3 kids of 1, 3, and 4. So I've got my hands full as far as I guess.
You're in the middle of it.
Yeah, my youngest actually just turned 1 yesterday. So shout out to Ian for that.
Oh, congratulations, Ian. Happy birthday.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I told my wife, it's like, once we're out of diapers, I'm not going back. So let's get the 3 out and let's be done with it.
She'll be the judge of that.
Yeah,
she'll be the answer to that.
She absolutely will. But I attended the University of Tennessee. The only 4 years that I ever lived outside of Cheatham County was when I attended the University of Tennessee, got a degree in history with the intention on going to law school, but I was so debt averse at the time that I couldn't justify the loans. And I wish I had back then in 2012, because now it's twice as expensive. Another reason that I want to go into politics so that I can hopefully affect change and give some opportunities to our young people. Mm-hmm. And one of the primary reasons that actually tipped the edge to get me into politics was the fact that I'm terrified to send my youngest daughter or oldest daughter to school in the fall. So I think we've got to make some education change, invest in our children, give states the power, give it back to the local boards of education, give it to the parents and the teachers. And incentivize teachers to actually get into the profession. So that's was a primary motivator.
What do you do for work? What do you do on a day-to-day?
So in the professional world, I was in management and data. So I was a data analyst and a manager of a team of in some cases 55 people, and a team as small as 7 to 10 people. So I've got a lot of experience from managing several organizations. Currently, I am a stay-at-home dad. From a financial perspective, I'm sure you've heard the child care costs right now are just skyrocketing. The demand for child care is just so high that supply is not meeting demand. And so the offers that I've gotten to go back out into the workforce just don't make sense for me.
I've got a great political campaign for you.
Yeah?
You're probably too young to remember Mr. Mom from back in the day. This was long before it became more commonplace for for dads to stay at home as opposed to moms to stay at home. And I'm all about it, by the way. I think it's great. I think it's you don't need me to tell you this. These are your children and your family, but I think it's fabulous because that's a far superior choice, in my opinion, than having your children in a daycare setting. But that said, Mr. Mom, look up Mr. Mom. Michael Keaton. Oh, come on. And
I remember the song.
Mr. Mom for Congress. I'm telling you, it'd be great.
Yeah, I might steal that. For sure.
And so what, you just are an observer of the political world. Walk me through the process and the conversation that you have within the home and with your wife. Hey, I'm thinking about running for Congress.
It was a spur of the moment decision, but I do have the full support of my wife. So, I lost my job in April 2023 and have been a stay-at-home dad since then. And I tried to start a small business. I came up with an excellent business plan, dumped myself into it for 6 weeks, but then my access to capital had been stripped, or not stripped, but I was asking for such a low number that no bank would lend to me. And I'm like, okay, so that's out the window. So I started applying to jobs. Thousands of applications and a handful of offers would not cover the cost of childcare on top of the commute, on top of everything else. So that was another motivating factor. Education is another motivating factor. The generational gap in Congress, where we've got older gentlemen and ladies in there that are representing us, that are making decisions that they themselves might never have to deal with.
I mean, you mentioned that. I don't want to get off track here from the bio, but I made a comment last night as I was watching. I'm certain you watched as well.
I did.
I'm watching, and the octogenarians, my goodness gracious. I mean, no, I'm not knocking older Americans when I say this, but that is in no way reflective of the society that they serve. I mean, there are far, far more. I would be willing to bet you that there are more people in that room over 70 than under 40.
I would,
and that's a problem.
I would agree with that.
I would suggest, and I understand with age comes a certain level of wisdom or whatever, but I just think that's a problem in terms of representing America and worrying about the future of our country for your children, grandchildren, and the future generations.
Yeah, speaking of last night, all I heard was spend. But I agree with you in complete agreement with you from that perspective, is that the generational gap doesn't lend itself to the representatives that are supposed to have my best interest at heart. They don't understand my lived experience. They don't understand my generation's lived experience. And that was a motivating factor for me to want to get into the race.
All right. So it's you made these preparations mentally and from a family standpoint before Mark Green made his announcement.
Correct.
It was by design that you wanted to offer yourself to public service simply as an alternative. What do you think, outside of the age question, what do you think you perhaps bring different, or what's unique that you can bring to the table that Congressman Green cannot?
Well, I think as I'm not sure if he's a member of the Freedom Caucus, but if he is, and if that side of the political spectrum, they have a tendency to dig their heels in, and they don't want to reach across the aisle. It's our way or no way, and we've got essentially gridlock. Now, I'm not saying that I would sacrifice my integrity or my personal ideals, but I also understand that compromise is not a bad word. And to be able to, my mediation training allows me to empathize with multiple points of view. So to be able to reach across the aisle and say, I know you're not going to get everything that you want, but neither am I. So let's talk, let's deal, let's figure out what the best situation is, and stop spending millions of dollars and countless hours of investigation time trying to catch the other side in a gotcha moment. Let's actually look at doing something that's going to affect the American people, specifically like with healthcare, infrastructure. I mean, what was it, a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill? And what do we have to show for it?
I mean, but do you think there's a way to compromise with Democrats nowadays? I mean, maybe there is.
I think there is a way, but we have to stay grounded in our conservative ideals and understand that we're arguing from the holding on to the reins. If you let a progressive go off, they're going to go off the rails. Arguably they have. So we need progressives to move conservatives forward, but progressives need conservatives to make sure that they don't run us off the cliff.
How would we bring up political ideologies. It occurs to me I've not asked. I mean, how would you describe yourself from an ideological standpoint?
I would consider myself a Jeffersonian Republican in the sense that I want to actively shrink the size of the government. It's overbloated. They're spending too much. How many three-letter agencies do we have that weren't governed by Congress? They were just enacted based off of the administrative state. So I want to actively shrink the government and all the three-letter agencies so that we can get our budget under control. The deficit talks from Biden last night at the State of the Union. I cut the deficit by $1 trillion. We had $4.5 trillion in revenue last year. You still spent 6.2. So where was the cut exactly?
Well, and the cuts he's referencing are COVID era, additional monies spent during the COVID era that weren't spent after that. I mean, it's just nonsense. It's phony baloney math, right?
It is. Just like the employment rate. He says we've got record low numbers. Well, if you do the true math, like people that are on government benefits are considered retired, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so if you factor in the people that are on benefits, the people that have been they've lost hope in the job market, which I wouldn't necessarily consider myself one of them, but I'm close. You factor in those things, and you're actually getting closer to 20, maybe 25% of the population is unemployed of the workforce. And so we've got to do something to change that. And then when Biden comes on and says, we're going to build chip factories and it's going to be $100,000 a year job and you don't have to have a college diploma. Well, you just smacked an entire generation in the face, because all I was told growing up from my mom, my teachers, my principals, everybody, go to college, you need a bachelor's degree, it's going to be the best thing that you ever did. And now my generation anyway, we've experienced multiple recessions or economic disasters, catastrophes, when 2008 and then COVID, and the bar keeps getting set farther and farther back for us.
Well, and I would say this too, Caleb, that embedded in that in that insinuation is the idea that if you don't go to college, you've somehow failed. And that is, it's one of the biggest lies told to, I would say my generation and future generations, that you have to go to college or otherwise somehow you have failed in some way, when there are trade opportunities. There are many different types of job opportunities out there for apprenticeships and whatnot that were just left by the wayside. Electrical. I mean, you can go down the list. And for us, we were told, if you don't go to school and get a 4-year degree, and many people went to school, got a 4-year degree in English or art. No offense to the history majors out there. I was a theater English major, right? Mm-hmm. If I did not have radio to fall back on, I would be working at a Starbucks somewhere, right? So I get it. I understand exactly where you're coming from.
And that's exactly right. I wish, that's one of my biggest regrets. I wish I would have learned something even at the beginner stage, even if I was still a beginner, for something to fall back on, so that I would know how to do something with my hands, whether that's being a mechanic or whether it's a carpenter or plumbing or electrical, something. But we've downgraded that to, in some ideological sense, to where it's less than for whatever reason. And I don't agree with that at all. So I think we need to bring vocational teachings back into the high school. Allow kids to have some financial literacy, which is also crazy to me. Through friends, I've learned that the COVID crisis, from an educational perspective, has 5th, 7th, 9th graders not even able to read at a third grade level. They don't understand basic arithmetic. So I think that from an education perspective, we've got to put some accountability on the parents and the students, in the sense that the students are learning that if they just show up, they're going to pass.
So, as you run for the 7th Congressional District, it's been my experience in the years that I've done this, that to defeat an incumbent, you have to tell the district in which you wish to serve why they are failing them in some form or fashion. And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you think Mark Green is a part of the overall spending problem that you addressed earlier? And how would you tackle this issue? Would you be more of a hard line when it comes to not voting on some of these omnibus? I mean, they just voted on this minibus package that was almost $500 billion. And I mean, it's a complex issue, don't get me wrong, but Speaker Mike Johnson comes out and says, and touts it as a great success and moving the ball forward. Well, I mean, I get it's a big problem and it's not going to be solved overnight, but do you think going along with some of these spending packages, would that be a part of the message that you would send to the 7th District, that you need to stop that?
Yes, to a certain extent. I mean, we need to keep the government running. We need to keep our livelihoods afloat. But I draw the line at, well, I'll put it this way. If you have ever flown on a plane, the safety procedure says put your own oxygen mask on before you help others.
Right.
That's kind of my philosophy from an American perspective. I agree that Ukraine needs support. I agree that Israel needs support, but not at the expense of the American people. And if we have estimated that it could cost between $20 and $60 billion to end the home crisis, the housing crisis in this country, but in the same $120 billion, quote, border bill, we've got $60 billion going to Ukraine. Well, we could have solved the housing crisis there, and that's just one less thing that we have to worry about. And sure, we're spending, but it's investing in America's future, not putting it around the world where Americans are farther and farther back in line for the benefits of their own tax dollars. As
you observe the foreign policy situation, do you think we're slow walking to military engagement over there?
I think we are, yes. I think it's almost inevitable, but it's more because of the handling from this administration.
Are you against that?
Boots
on the ground.
I am against boots on the ground, the way that we are doing it. But if you're going to, my foreign policy goes back to Teddy Roosevelt. Speak softly, but carry a big stick. So we need to be prepared to do what we need to do. And if our current efforts aren't being effective, then we need to take that extra step.
What is in the minute or two that we have left? What's the main takeaway as you introduce yourself to the audience? We'll have many of these conversations moving forward, because I believe in people like you, Caleb, offering yourself to public service. That's what it's supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about career politicians. I'm not casting aspersions at Green or anyone else when I say that. It is what it is. And so I want to encourage people like you, not discourage people like you. You know the uphill battle that you're facing. You understand the amount of money that's going to be spent in this campaign. How do people find out more about you, and what's the main takeaway you want folks to take from this introduction?
Okay, so to find out more about me, you can go to my website at stacktn.com. So that would be the best place to learn about my issues and my platform in general. and take away from this that I intend on running a clean campaign. I will never accept a donation from an organization that would be holding me to anyone other than the Tennessee 7th Congressional District. And even on that line, I have a hard time asking hardworking families to donate anything to my campaign. So the takeaway is to open your minds, open your hearts, and have a listen, and reach out so that I can converse with you and have that conversation with you, and hopefully let's make a change on the national
You got
scale.
you got some good walking shoes over there?
Yeah.
Get some walking shoes and knock on some doors, brother.
14 counties across the 7th District, and I've been to every single one of them so far. And heck, I've got my family has some property out in Decatur County where we go by the Tennessee River and go trailing and fishing and all that good stuff. So I've got some experience in this area, and I hope that I can connect with the people on a visceral level.
How many, you said you had a 1-year-old. So what does that mean? Forgive me for not knowing, but what are we, 2 more years for diapers, right?
About, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, depends on how fast he potty trains.
Well, work on that while, you're working on your congressional campaign.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, Caleb, thank you, and best of luck to you. Come by and see us as the campaign moves forward, and we'll have you on back again.
I can't wait.
There's Caleb Stack. He's running for the 7th Congressional District. We enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did as well. 223. We'll get to your calls momentarily on Super Talk.